Hello everyone! In today's video, I continue with the 1972 Chevy Prerunner build by mounting the fender flares and bedside pieces, as well as wiring the headlights. Recently, I've been able to continue with the Prerunner project. I've made quite a bit of progress recently by modifying the body and getting it ready for paint, as well as designing some custom fender flare and bedside pieces, which I've showed previously. I'm now ready to finally mount the fender flares to the body, as well as figure out a way that I'm going to mount each rear bedside piece. I talked a little bit about my plans for mounting the bedsides in a previous video, as well as designed a rear mount. While everything is still apart, I went over all of the parts with 600 grit sandpaper, which will provide a good surface for the paint to adhere to. I wanted to try to smooth the insides of the bedside pieces a little bit with some coarse sandpaper. Even though these won't be as visible, I thought it'd be nice to clean them up. I wiped away the dust and moved on to mounting the fenders. My plan is to simply use an adhesive to secure each fender flare to the body. Before doing this though, I wanted to use some sandpaper to remove a lot of the primer and to make sure that there is a good surface on each of the parts for the adhesive to bond to. I decided to use some JB Weld epoxy to secure each fender piece. Even though I won't be subjecting this body to any real abuse, I wanted to make sure that these parts are solidly attached, so I figured some JB Weld should work great. After mixing both parts, I just smeared it onto the fender and set it in place, and I did my best to clean up some of the excess. I know I've already had an opportunity to test fit these and see how they look several times before, but like I've said previously, I really like the look of these custom fender flares. They certainly help give this truck the wild, custom look that I'm going for. I let the epoxy dry overnight. The next day, I used some sandpaper and a rounded file to further clean up the epoxy around the edge. The epoxy actually sanded and could be scraped away from the body relatively easy, making this less of a hassle than I thought it would be. After a little bit of work, the edge was really starting to look much better. I switched my attention over to the chassis. Specifically, I wanted to wire the headlights. In a previous video, I did the wiring for the lights on the roof rack. Now that I have the 5mm LEDs that I'm using for the headlights, I can wire those as well. I started out by cutting all of these sections of wire to the approximate length that I'd like them to be. After that, I then soldered the wires onto the LEDs. I then added a connector which will make removing the body completely a lot easier. I also wanted to wire in a switch so that I would have the option of choosing whether the lights are on or off. Finally, I added 2 resistors that I had on hand to prevent too much current from flowing through the LEDs. I did a quick test to make sure that the lights are working. After verifying that everything is working, I solder it along with the other connection that I have for the roof rack to the voltage booster. I plug in all of the connections and once again verify that everything is working. I still need to add a switch to the roof rack circuit, along with making sure that there is no exposed sections of wire like there is currently, but I will be doing that after I install the roof rack since the wires need to be fed through small holes in the truck's roof. With that complete, I turned my attention back to the body. After some brainstorming, I decided that the easiest way to mount the front section of the bedside pieces would be to make some small mounts and secure them to the back of the cab using bolts and nuts. Before beginning to make the mounts, I decided to remove some material around where the cage will be so that the bedside pieces can fit further in. After cleaning up the edge with a file, I then cut a piece of styrene which I will use to make the mount. I bent the mount so that it will position the bedside piece at the correct angle, and marked where I wanted to drill the holes which the bolts will slide through. I make another mount that is the same size and shape for the opposite side. I then glue each mount into position on the bedside pieces. To figure out where I needed to drill the holes in the cab, I held each bedside piece in the position that I wanted it, and then I used the holes in the mount as a guide to make the holes in the cab. It's probably not the most accurate way of doing it, but it worked fine. I designed and printed the rear mounts in a previous video. I used a drill to make sure that the holes were large enough to fit a 3mm rod. I'll actually need to position these mounts in a different location from where I intended when I designed them, but this won't be an issue. Next, I needed to figure out how long I needed to make the 3mm rod, which the magnetic mount will be secured to the outer end of. I then cut 2 sections of the rod to that length and glued each end to the 3D printed pieces. After that, I glued a magnet to each mount. While waiting for the glue to dry, I applied some filler to a spot where I started to drill, but it ended up not being the right position. Now I was ready to glue the magnets onto the bedside pieces. I cut a section of paper that will prevent the glue from sticking to the mount. I then once again taped the mount into position and then applied some glue to the magnets to secure them to the bedside. I use tape to make sure that the bedside pieces stay in the correct position while the glue dries. It's really awesome to see how this truck is coming together. I really like the look of both the fender flares along with the bedsides. I'm going to be keeping everything taped up as it is right now for a while until the glue has had a chance to fully cure. Although this is probably not the cleanest way of mounting the bedsides to the rest of the truck, it should hold up just fine, and I like that they are easily removable. The only thing appearance-wise so far that I think I might want to change is adding a few magnets onto the rear bedside mounts to extend the back sections out a little further, since I think currently they look like they are just a bit too far in. But other than that, I'm really pleased with how the truck is turning out, and I'm looking forward to continuing to make some more progress. And I'm going to conclude today's video by showcasing some of the awesome projects and vehicles that have been showcased on the Make It RC Facebook group. Thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you next time.